Good evening. On behalf of the Community Pregnancy Center of Lake Norman, I'd like to welcome you to our virtual banquet. We are so honored that you've chosen to spend your evening with us tonight. My name is Tracy Lester, and I have the incredible privilege of serving as Executive Director of this life-saving ministry. I don't usually think of myself as someone who makes a formal case, but tonight that's exactly what we're going to do. We are going to make a case for life, a case for why it matters, and a case for why it's worth defending. Now, I'm no expert, but I've seen enough to know that a strong case doesn't just happen. It's built on a few important truths. Tonight, I'd like to submit to you, first, that every life is deeply valuable. Second, that life is increasingly at risk. Third, defending life requires action. And finally, each of us has a role to play. We are truly honored to have Lee Strobel with us tonight as our keynote speaker. Many of you know him as the author of The Case for Christ, and tonight he will help us make a case for life, taking the first truth that life is deeply valuable to a much deeper level, and I can't think of anyone better to guide us in that. But before we hear from him, I want to help you see why this case matters so much right here in our own community, and why the Community Pregnancy Center of Lake Norman is needed now more than ever. And my hope is that at the end of our time together, you will not only understand the need, but be moved by it and recognize the opportunity to be part of what God is doing. When a woman finds herself in a crisis pregnancy, she may be convinced that abortion is her only way out. Very often, the first thing she does is begin her search for help online. And in that moment, life is hanging in the balance. She will find one of two things. She will either find us, or she will find an abortion clinic. You may or may not know this, but Mecklenburg County, an area we serve, consistently has the highest number of abortions in North Carolina. And many of those women are traveling from surrounding states because access is readily available here. She can simply make an appointment online and go to the clinic for a surgical abortion or the abortion pill. But the reality is, she doesn't really even have to leave her home anymore. Imagine her already overwhelmed by difficult life circumstances, financial struggles, broken relationships, or simply trying to hold everything together. Seeing 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test immediately sends her into panic mode. And in that moment, she believes that having this baby will cause everything she's been trying so hard to hold together fall apart. With just a few clicks, her abortion pills can be ordered online, prescribed through a screen, and delivered to her door. No ultrasound, no medical care, a heartbreaking decision made easy, made quickly, and often in isolation. The emotional and spiritual aftermath and devastation can't be calculated. Now imagine that same woman, same circumstances, and she's thinking, please no, this can't be happening. She begins searching for help. She makes the call, and she reaches us instead. I can't do this, she says, and we tell her what no one else has. You're not alone, and we will help you. Because defending life requires action. At the Community Pregnancy Center of Lake Norman, we meet her in that moment. Through our 2 centers in Huntersville and Mooresville, we provide a safe, welcoming place where she can take a deep breath and begin to slow everything down. We start with a free pregnancy test to confirm what she's facing, and then we offer her an ultrasound. And the ultrasound, well, that often changes everything. The sound of her baby's heartbeat, the gentle movement, a little wiggle on the screen, and even sometimes a perfectly timed wave of a tiny hand. And in that moment, it's as if baby is advocating for his very own life. Clear, undeniable evidence of life. and Mama begins to fall in love. And that love gives her the courage to choose life for her baby. And we celebrate with her in that decision. And then we get to work. Because here's the thing, like you, we know that a crisis pregnancy doesn't end the moment a woman chooses life for her baby. And actually, that's often when the hard work begins. The Pregnancy Center is committed to walking alongside of her through her pregnancy and beyond by providing maternity and baby items, diapers, wipes, mentorship through our long-term support program. But really, one of the most beautiful things is watching the friendships and support they find in other young mothers facing some of the same challenges. Church groups are invited into the center and personally have the ability to minister to our clients through our Lifeline ministry. So yes, we celebrate each life that is spared from abortion, and we mourn those who weren't. Many, many women silently suffer after their abortion, believing that they can never be forgiven, living with shame and regret of the decision. But we know the God who restores, and this ministry directs them to His healing love. Forgiven and Set Free is a 12-week journey of restoration and healing for the woman who has had an abortion. It is truly one of the most beautiful things that we do at the center. We point her to Jesus Christ for true and complete healing. And the Lord has provided us many ways to reach the abortion-determined woman. Our mobile medical unit means that we now have the ability to extend our services beyond the walls of our buildings and offer free pregnancy tests and ultrasounds to the most vulnerable. The medical mobile unit allows us to take our ministry directly to the front lines on the battlefield. For 2 years, we have parked ourselves out front of an abortion clinic. Where better place than to put something that saves lives in a place that takes lives? We take light into the darkness. Our hope is to reach them before they do the unthinkable. However, that doesn't always happen. Often, we would notice that some of those leaving the abortion clinic would be weeping, couples walking out like they've just experienced a funeral. We realize that even in those heart-wrenching moments, there is an opportunity to share Christ. So we began assembling and handing out bags containing items intended for those who might be considering abortion, but also items intended for physical healing, offering information on abortion pill reversal and spiritual healing, a beautiful handwritten letter from a woman who had chosen abortion and found restoration through Jesus Christ. So you see, making the case for life looks a little different at the center than it does here. It happens in a quiet room, sitting across from a woman in crisis, speaking truth in love. And I could share story after story because each of the hundreds of clients we saw this year has a story. And we have the privilege of standing with these brave women, helping them see that their child is not a burden, it's a gift. And tonight, you are part of that story. Because of you, a mother will hear the words, "You are not alone." Because of you, a life will be saved. So many of you have walked alongside this ministry for so many years. For you, the case for life has already been settled in your heart. It's why you're here. It's why you're watching tonight. It's why this ministry matters to you. And the beautiful thing is that you are about to hear a story, a testimony, if you will, from a woman who once stood at the crossroads and chose hope. She didn't just receive support, she became part of a community that walked with her every step of the way. And tonight, she'd like to share that story with you.
So I was part-time McDonald's, full-time student, and then just keeping up with my kids. I had 3 girls before this pregnancy. When I found out I was pregnant, it was actually my youngest girl's 6th birthday. Wasn't feeling good. I was like, oh Lord, yeah, let me do this. I know the feeling. I mean, I had 3 girls before that, so let me do this test. I finally felt like I was getting my head above water, and looking forward to doing something full-time. All my girls were going to be in school, big girl school at this point. So kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 10th grade in high school. And then I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this. It's like, I don't want this. I was looking for different abortion clinics. Actually, on her birthday, I had an appointment here. She didn't even know. I was like, I'm going for a walk. I walked up here, and I went back home and had a birthday party. So when I came here, I was defeated. And then I met Miss Tracy, and we had a conversation. But Miss Tracy asked me a personal question. Why are you a Christian? And that just struck my heart, just sunk, and I'm like, I am. So what am I doing? What am I thinking? Am I thinking this through? That was the question that turned my life around, because it made me face myself in the mirror, like, this is not what you do. So when I got the ultrasound, because I talked to my little sister about it, she was like, well, once you hear the ultrasound, you're gonna change your mind. And she was right. I was like, oh my gosh, heartbeat, because it's just like, it's that amazing feeling of, I know that I was meant to be a mother. The heartbeat of it is like, yeah, we are connected. He's already in my womb. I didn't know what it was, he or she, but like, that was it. Once I heard the heartbeat, it kind of just dotted the lines for me. So joining the HOPE program was amazing. I wasn't working that year that I joined, so that whole year, I didn't need anything. Like, I had the diapers, I had the wipes, I had the clothes. I love this program, the benefits of it, the spiritual experience, just a group of women just loving, compassionate, and not judging, you know? Everybody had their different situation, but I wasn't judged. I was met with love, I was met with hope, I was met with just a Christian experience. It was fulfilling for me. It was like, I can do this. I grew stronger in just the fruit of the spirits in general, because yes, I gained peace, I gained joy. The HOPE program brought me just even more faith in God. So I applied for the educational grant through the HOPE program while I was doing my studies, and it was very beneficial for one. It just keeps you on top of your game. I'm a great student. I do give myself that credit. But to have that, incentive through this program was a plus. And I didn't have it, so it came right on time. And I'm still pushing for my education. I'm looking to receive the associates in early childhood education. I have been on the dean's list since I started the program. Every semester I've been on the dean's list. I do pride myself in making sure that I'm doing the best, just because my children, I want them to know that we can do this. You just have to commit and discipline yourself. I've also received a full-time job as a preschool teacher. I teach 2s and 3s. They absolutely love me. I love where I'm at. It's a small group of children, but they are full of love, they're full of joy, and it's just where I needed to be. And so I get to be her mom all day long. I love being a mom. Judah is a joy. I named him Judah King Bliss. Judah means powerful and brave, King because superior, and bliss means extreme happiness. But when I accepted the fact that, hey, I'm having a child and it's going to be okay, my life completely changed. My demeanor of carrying this child completely changed. I was excited, I was happy, and the day before my daughter's 16th birthday, I found that I was having a boy. So that was her birthday gift for me. She was so excited. My girls love Judah. Judah is just a joy. He is friendly, a friend of all friends, and just one of a kind. He is. He brings so much light to our house, and he's the only boy, so he's ruling. He's the king in the home. Here I go. I'm about to go in here, do what I gotta do, and just go home. And that's what I thought it was gonna be, but it was not like that. He just he met me here. God met me here, yeah. If I would have went through with that, imagine that, aborting your child and that added depression, you will always remember that. I could not do that. Look at my 3 girls and then knowing that I aborted a gift from God, because that's what children are.
What a powerful testimony. Not just because of what Samantha said, but because of who she is holding. It's the outcome of a brave decision at a critical moment. But that moment didn't happen by chance. It happened because defending life requires action. And what you just saw is not an isolated story. It is evidence. Evidence that when a woman is met with truth, compassion, and support, it empowers her to choose life. But that kind of support doesn't happen by accident. It requires intentional, sustained investment. We receive no government funding. Every service we provide exists because God moves the hearts of His people, people like you. That is what keeps us on the front lines, standing for those who are the most vulnerable. And the reality is, the need has never been greater. We're living in a time where life is increasingly devalued, where abortion is more accessible than ever, where the internet has in many ways become the new back alley. And yet, this moment is not without hope. Because God has entrusted us, this generation, with the opportunity to act, to stand in the gap, to ensure that women are not alone, and that life is defended with both truth and compassion. Last year, 855 women who were actively seeking abortion found us online and contacted us before reaching an abortion provider. That didn't happen by chance. It happened because of a strategic digital outreach campaign, one that cost approximately $45,000 each year. When those women reach out, they are met by our staff, a highly trained crisis team who can immediately offer free pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, compassionate, compelling options counseling, ongoing support, abortion pill reversal, and life-affirming medical advice. These services are delivered by a team of 14 professionals, including 3 nurses, a registered diagnostic medical sonographer, and our OB, Dr. Katie Collins. Providing this level of expert, compassionate care accounts for $425,000 of our annual budget. We're also meeting women where they are through our mobile medical unit. We take it directly to an abortion clinic in Charlotte, offering ultrasounds to women before they walk through those doors. To operate there, security, staffing, fuel, and maintenance cost about $28,000 each year. And for moms who choose life, our work doesn't end there. Our comprehensive parenting support program walks with women long after their initial decision, equipping and empowering them for what comes next. That program, along with the operating of our 2 centers and raising funds, requires another $215,000 each year. Every one of those investments is essential. Every one increases the number of women we can reach. And every one represents lives that can be saved. Altogether, our annual budget is $725,000. Tonight, we're trusting God to provide $370,000 of that, because we know what that represents. It takes about $1,600 to walk alongside one woman to meet her in crisis and empower her to choose life. So tonight, $370,000 means 231 moms and their babies impacted forever. So as you listen to Lee Strobel make a case for life in just a moment, our hope is that you begin to see the vital role you play. And now, it is my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker. Atheist turned Christian, former legal editor of the Chicago Tribune and New York Times best-selling author Lee Strobel has spent decades investigating life's biggest questions with the mind of a journalist and the heart of a truth seeker. His books, including The Case for Christ and The Case for Faith, have impacted millions around the world, and tonight he helps us make a compelling case for life. Would you please join me in warmly welcoming Lee Strobel?
Well, we had an embarrassing thing happen. We were doing an event. We printed up everybody's name tag in advance with their first name real big so people could greet each other, right? People came in, they put their name tag on, they went into the event. We thought everything worked great until about halfway through the first day. This woman came back up to the registration desk and she was all upset. We said, "What's wrong?" She said, "My name has been misspelled." Okay, we're thinking, is that really a big deal? We said, "Well, what's your name?" She said, "My name is Sylvia." And sure enough, she'd been walking around all day with a name tag that said saliva. She was spitting mad, I'll tell you that. Anyway. Anyway, my wife and I flew in here from Houston, Texas. Any former Texans here? Yeah, a few. Oh, wow. You got smart. You moved to North Carolina. That's awesome. Yeah, we moved down to, why does anybody live in Houston? It's kind of the armpit of Texas, to be honest, you know? Why does anybody live in Houston? I'll give you one word and you'll get it. Grandchildren. That's where my two oldest grandchildren are, so that's where we live. And so my grandkids have become total Texans. They got the cowboy hats, they got the cowboy boots, they took in horseback riding lessons. I mean, they're totally into it. But the reason I know they're total Texans is one night at dinner, my little granddaughter Penelope, she calls me Bappa. She said, Bappa, could I pray for dinner tonight? I said, sure. So this is what she prayed. God is good. God is great. Thank you for the Lone Star State. So, that's a convert for you. Yeah, she's a total Texan, total Texan. But so I'm from Chicago. What do I know about Texas? Nothing. So no kidding, I went on Amazon and I bought a book called How to Talk Texan. I'm serious, I read it. I learned how to talk Texan. First thing I learned, the difference between y'all and all y'all. And all y'all's pro, you use those terms here, right? This is South enough, right? We don't use those in Chicago, so I learned that. But the thing I learned about talking Texan that I like the most is that in Texas, if you want to say thank you to someone, you could say thank you. Or you could say, I appreciate you. Isn't that nice? Not I appreciate it, I appreciate you. And that's what I want to say to each and every one of you. I appreciate you. I really do. I appreciate you being here tonight in support of the Community Pregnancy Center and its work. I mean, when Tracy had us look around the room and see how many people are in this place and to realize that that represents a number of children who are alive today because of the way that all y'all have supported the center through the years. I just think that's awesome. So I'm glad to be here for that. And I want to talk about the case for life. And there are two reasons why this is a personal case for me. The first reason was I was myself an unwanted pregnancy. My parents had 3 children in rapid succession. My dad was very involved with the children and raised them and kind of was done with the father thing. He'd done that deal, and many years passed, and all of a sudden, my mom found herself pregnant with me. And I'm so grateful that 74 years ago, when I was born, that abortion was not legal in our country. And then my parents were Christians, and they chose life, and that's the only reason I'm here tonight. So that's the first reason it's personal to me. There's another reason I'll save for later. But I've been encouraged to read recently about the number of young people who become pro-life. Have you read these statistics? It's amazing. Get this, new statistics show that the pro-life support is the strongest among 18 to 34-year-olds. 57% of them say that abortion is morally wrong, up from 50% over just the last 2 years. And yeah, isn't that amazing? It's awesome. And when you ask, why is that? Why are more young people becoming pro-life? There's 3 reasons they give. Number 1, ultrasound. Tracy mentioned this. It provides a window into the womb that allows women to see the humanity of their child at a young age. Second, more and more women who've had abortions are speaking out about the harm that they experienced. And then third, this was expressed by a female college student. She said, one big reason is because our generation is missing so many people because of abortion. She said there are many people college age who have siblings who have been aborted. There are people missing in our lives because they were never given a chance to live. Siblings, friends, maybe even people we would have married. We mourn them, and we resolve to stand up for their God-given right to life so that others will not share that same fate. So we're seeing young people, but I'm a skeptic by nature. My background's in journalism and law, so you can imagine, put those 2 things together, what kind of a skeptic that you get. And so I'm wondering, is this just an emotional thing among young people? Is this just a flash in the pan? Is this just something they're feeling that maybe babies ought to be valued and so forth? So I was speaking on the campus of a Christian school in Phoenix, Arizona called Grand Canyon University, huge school. And I met a young man named Matthew. Matthew, he was a student there. He's probably 18, 19 years old. And he was very vociferous in his support of the pro-life movement. And I appreciated that, but I said, Matthew, let me just stop you for a second. I said, I just want to be confident that the reason you and so many of your fellow students are pro-life is because of the evidence, because of the truth that unborn children matter to God. So I said, I'm going to give you a challenge. Right here, right now, give me 5 reasons why you're pro-life. And this young man thought for a moment. He said, I think I can do that. I said, okay, go ahead. What's your first reason you're pro-life? He said, Lee, my first reason I'm pro-life is that unborn babies are living human beings. They're living human beings. He said, the only reason abortion is accepted is that people are deceived into thinking that unborn babies aren't really human. Pro-choice propaganda says that an unborn baby is just a clump of cells. But he said the evidence shows that an unborn baby becomes a living human being at the time of conception. And I knew he was right. I've looked at the textbooks in medical schools. There's a textbook called The Developing Human, Clinically Oriented Embryology that says, quote, human development begins at fertilization, which marks the beginning of each of us as a unique individual. In fact, there was recently a 5-year research study published in a scientific journal that showed that 95% of biologists from over 1,000 academic institutions confirm, quote, a human's life begins at fertilization. So Matthew told me quite accurately that at the moment of conception, we become a living human being with our own DNA. We're unique. There will never be anybody like us. He said, as an adult, you didn't come from a fetus any more than you came from a teenager. You were once a fetus, just as you were once a teenager. Those are merely descriptions of various stages of development. They don't make you human. You started out that way. I said, okay, I'll grant you that, but wouldn't you grant me the fact that there are major differences between who you are now and who you were when you were a fetus? He said, yes, of course, but he said the key is there are not any distinctions that change our value as a human being. In fact, he said none is a determining factor in deciding whether someone is human. And I knew he was right. Scott Klusendorf, who is a bioethicist, and happens to be a good friend of mine, wrote a book called The Case for Life. And he said, there's only 4 major differences between an unborn baby and one that has been born. First, size. Unborn babies are smaller than ones that have been born. But size doesn't determine if we're human. If it did, that means I would be less human and deserving fewer rights than LeBron James, right? Second, the level of development. Unborn babies are less developed than ones that have been born. But our level of development doesn't determine whether we're human. If it did, would that mean a 12-year-old boy who's not human because his voice is in a tug of war with puberty? No. He's just as much human as I am, Matthew told me, because being human doesn't depend on how developed you are. And then Matthew said further, there's the environment. Unborn babies are still in the womb. And some argue that because they haven't been born into our world, they're not yet human. But he said where we are does not determine whether we're human. If it did, that means astronauts who are on that recent trip to the moon aren't human because they were not on Earth anymore. No, being human does not matter in terms of where you are. And then finally, Matthew said there's a degree of dependency. Unborn babies are more dependent on their mothers than ones that have been born. But being dependent doesn't determine if someone is human. If it did, that would mean that infants aren't human because they wouldn't be able to survive without their parents' attention. No, he said, because being a human being does not depend on how reliant you are on other people. But I said, why does that matter? Why does it matter? He said, Lee, it matters because you are the same being now that you were when you were a fetus. From the moment of conception until now, there's been no essential change to your nature. He said, the bottom line, Lee, is if you're intrinsically valuable now, you were intrinsically valuable then, and therefore deserve the right to life at both stages. So Matthew said, Lee, that's my first reason why I'm pro-life. Unborn babies are living human beings. I said, well, Matthew, that's pretty impressive. I said, give me your second reason you're pro-life. He said, Lee, my second reason is unborn babies are not subhuman. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, Lee, more and more abortion advocates are having to concede that unborn babies are living human beings. And so to justify abortion, they say the unborn are only subhuman and therefore worth less than a woman's so-called right to choose. He said this act of demeaning a person's humanity is called dehumanization. It's necessary if you're going to try to justify injustice. We've seen extreme forms of it. The Nazis did this in World War II. They dehumanized Jewish people, leading to the murder of millions of individuals. But he said, Lee, as you know, Jewish people are valuable simply because they're members of the species Homo sapiens and are thus human beings who've been endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights and therefore deserve to be valued and protected the same as we all are. So dehumanizing them was wrong then, and dehumanizing the unborn as subhuman is wrong now. I said, okay, that's a good argument. Give me your third reason, Matthew, that you're pro-life. He said, Lee, my third reason, I'm a Christian, he said, and I believe unborn babies are loved by God. I said, really? He said, absolutely. He said, I believe what the Bible says in Genesis 1, verse 27, quote, and he quoted this from memory. He said, God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And he looked at me and said, consequently, every person has inherent value and worth. This clearly includes the unborn because God, throughout Scripture, explicitly shows his love and concern for the unborn. I said, oh yeah? Give me an example. Give me an example from the Old Testament. He said, Jeremiah 1, verse 5. God says to the prophet, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. I said, well, what about the New Testament? He said, Galatians 1, verse 15. The Apostle Paul says, God, quote, set me apart from my mother's womb and called me by his grace. But then he looked at me and he said, Lee, the clearest scripture on this is found in Psalm 139. And then, again, he quoted it to me from memory. It says, you, God, made all the delicate inner parts of my body, and you knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous, how well I know. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day has passed. And then Matthew looked me in the eye and he said, Lee, in light of that, how can anybody say to God, this person that you lovingly created and designed does not deserve life? I said, Matthew, that's profound. I said, what's your fourth reason you're pro-life? So my fourth reason is unborn babies are innocent regardless of how they were conceived. He said, I'm aware that in any conversation about pro-life issues, one of the first topics that comes up is the topic of rape. He said it's one of the worst crimes anybody can commit against another individual. Now, granted, people do tend to overestimate the number of abortions due to rape or incest. It's actually only 1 out of every 770 abortions. But he said at the same time, a child conceived in rape is still innocent and valuable. So we shouldn't punish the child for the crimes of his father. A child, he said, cannot be blamed for the manner of his conception any more than a toddler can be blamed for an abusive parent. He said every baby is made in the image of God and therefore continues to have inherent worth and deserves full protection. He said, fortunately, Lee, there are organizations like Community Pregnancy Center that provide alternatives and hope for people who find themselves in very difficult situations. And they do it with love and with grace and with God at their side. I said, Matthew, you're making a good case. But give me your fifth and final reason you're pro-life. I said, Lee, my fifth reason is that unborn babies deserve the benefit of the doubt. So what do you mean they deserve the benefit of that? What do you mean by that? He said, Lee, personally, I believe the 4 arguments I've already given you should be enough for any fair-minded person to come to the conclusion that they should be pro-life. But even if they aren't totally convinced, they should still be pro-life. I said, why? He said, let me tell you a true story. It goes back to the early 1940s. There was a man named Arnie Sky. And Arnie Sky was driving down a rural highway in North Dakota with his daughter Jean by his side. Jean, as it turns out, is Matthew's grandmother today. So here we have this guy, 1940s, rural North Dakota, speeding down a rural highway with his daughter by his side, and suddenly they see something on the pavement up ahead. It's a medium-sized cardboard box. So Arnie eased off the gas pedal a little bit, trying to decide, what do I do now that there's this cardboard box coming up? And it's tempting just to steer around it and let somebody else deal with it and take it off the road. Or he thought, you know what, maybe I should just hit it, because it'd be kind of fun to see the cardboard go flying. That'd be kind of cool. But instead, he pulled off the road next to the cardboard box to take it off the road. And as he did, he's walking toward the box. Suddenly, the flaps of the box flew open, and a giggling child popped his head out of that cardboard box. Well, Arnie and Jean were shocked that there was a baby, a child, a youngster in this cardboard box. And so they found the home where this child lived and returned him to the family. And many years later, Jean, now Matthew's grandmother, said to Matthew, you know, my father told me you never know what might be inside of something like that. He said, I knew the box could contain things that would be valuable to someone, and that there even could be something alive inside of it. He said, whenever you're unsure about things like that, it's always better to give the benefit of the doubt and play it safe. You might be wrong, but you might save someone's life. Now, Matthew looked at me and said, Lee, when Arnie and Jean are flying down that highway and they saw the box on the highway, how sure do you think they were that there was a baby, a child, in that box? Not at all. They wouldn't be sure of that. Statistically, what are the odds? You know, 1 chance in 1,000 that there'd be a kid in that box? Maybe 1 chance in 1,000. And yet, even if the chance was 1 in 1,000 that there would be a child in that box, given that you're dealing with human life, there was enough question in Arnie's mind to give the benefit of the doubt and to play it safe, and he thanked God for the rest of his life that he did. And so Matthew looked at me and said, you know, when I have friends who challenge me on the topic of abortion, I say to them, in light of all of the information from science and scripture and civil rights due to human beings, how sure are you that this is not a human being worthy of full protection? Are you positive that this baby, with his own DNA, his own blood type, his own fingerprints, his own heartbeat, his own brain waves, how sure are you that baby is not a living human being? Are you 50% convinced? Well, if Arnie and Jean saw a box in the middle of the road and thought there was a 50% chance a human being would be in it, do you think they would have hit the box? No. Even if they thought there was 1 chance in 1,000, they would pull off the road and save that child. So Matthew looked at me and said, Lee, is there one chance in 1,000 that the unborn child is a living human being? If so, given the precious value of human life, we should give the benefit of the doubt to the unborn and protect what the evidence overwhelmingly shows are living human beings. Well, I was pretty impressed by this young man. I found out later he won a national debate competition on the topic of abortion. He later went on to get his master's degree in philosophy of religion and is now an apologist who gives arguments for the sanctity of human life. But I agree with it. I think the case is clear and compelling. I think it's powerful and persuasive that we need to fight for the rights of unborn children, especially in light of some new statistics that just came out. This will blow your mind. They did a study of 987 women who had abortions, and nearly 6 out of 10 of them said they got the abortion to make someone else happy. 6 out of 10. And 2 out of 3 of them said they knew in their hearts they were making a mistake while the abortion was being performed. It's tragic. But we also got to do something else. And this is something that community pregnancy centers do here, the 2 centers that we're honoring here tonight. They let women who've aborted children know that there is forgiveness available through Jesus Christ. There is healing. There is hope for those that have taken the road of abortion. And that's the second reason why this topic is personal to me. Because when I was a 20-year-old atheist and a journalism student at the University of Missouri, one spring day I was on the quadrangle and a young woman I knew came up to me and she was crying. I said, what's going on? What's wrong? She said, Lee, I just found out I'm pregnant and I don't know what to do. I'm 19 years old. My boyfriend ran out of me. He doesn't want anything to do with it. I don't know what to do. You're older than me. You've been around more than I have. Could you give me some advice? Could you tell me what to do? And I said, yes, I can. I said, if the baby's in your way, you just get rid of it. I said, abortion is legal in the state of New York. I'll raise the money for you. We'll make all the arrangements. You can go up to New York and you can have the abortion. It's not a big deal. If that clump of cells is in your way, you just get rid of it. And I helped orchestrate the destruction of that innocent unborn child who had done nothing wrong but get in someone's way. And you know what? Didn't bother me one bit. Didn't bother me one bit. Until years later, after spending 2 years investigating the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, the scientific evidence for the existence of a creator, becoming convinced that God exists and that Jesus is his unique son, and on November the 8th of 1981, yielding my life to him, receiving Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And that's when it hit me, the depth of the sin that I had committed. And I knew, I confessed it when I came to faith, but I knew God had forgiven me. I get that. That's what he does. That's what grace is all about, right? But the hurt is deeper than that. And I couldn't forgive myself. And I found it hard to believe that God had forgiven me. And so I lived with this weight on me for a number of years. Until one day I thought, maybe I'll feel better if I were to write a letter to the child who I killed. So I took a piece of paper and I wrote a letter to that child. And I said, I wish, first of all, I'm so sorry for the choice that I made to arrange for your abortion. And I wish I could go back and change everything, but I can't. And I regret it. I'm sorry. And I look forward someday to being in heaven with you and getting to know you there. And I wrote that, and I felt a little better after doing that, like I communicated something personal to that child. And I put that letter in my desk. And it stayed there for a number of years. I'd see it every once in a while to remind me. But then, you know what happened? One day it was gone. I don't know how I lost it. Somehow I lost it. And I thought, isn't that just like God? That he would allow me to lose that letter. Because this is important. God acts as if we never committed the sin in the first place. God said in Isaiah 43, verse 25, even I am he who blots out your transgressions for my own sake and remembers your sin no more. It's like it never happened. And that helped me heal my heart from the sin that I had committed. And I'm so glad the Community Pregnancy Center offers the hope of Jesus Christ to men and to women who've chosen to walk down the road of abortion, and to encourage them and to help them see you can still have a future. You can still know God personally. You can still be assured of spending heaven, being in heaven with him. But most of all, we want to help women with unplanned pregnancies so that they don't make the wrong choice and end up dealing with that kind of guilt in the first place. We want to save as many lives of these precious children as we possibly can. You know, I moved to Houston, Texas, just in time for Hurricane Harvey. We don't have hurricanes in Chicago. I had 43 inches of rain at my house in 5 days. It's a nightmare to go through a hurricane. I know you guys had that hurricane not long ago here in North Carolina, right? Horrible, horrible. But you know what I noticed after the hurricane was over? I saw that there are some people in the midst of a tragedy like that who sacrifice their own safety, their own time, their own money, their own comfort to rescue others whose lives were in jeopardy. You know what we call those people? Heroes. We call them heroes. A hero is someone who makes a personal sacrifice so that someone else can be saved. Well, today, everyone in this room has the chance to be a hero. You can be a hero tonight by investing in what God is doing through Community Pregnancy Center so that the lives of more and more babies can be saved. It's our chance to do something extraordinary. You know, we go to motion pictures and we see these movies about superheroes, you know, and they're all fantasy stuff and kind of ridiculous. I can't get into it. But you know what? I'm looking out at a crowd of heroes. A crowd of heroes. I remember a few months ago, I was going to do an event like this at a crisis pregnancy center in the state of Georgia. And I was packing my clothes up to go on this trip. And my little granddaughter, Penelope, said, "Papa, where are you going?" And I looked at her and said, "Penelope, I'm going to go save some babies." And her eyes got wide and she looked at me. She said, "Papa, you're Spider-Man." Well, I'm not Spider-Man, but you know what? I can save lives. I can save lives of babies by being generous and by investing in rescuing these children. You know, I live, as I say, in Houston. We got the Galveston area down there on the Gulf of, what's it going to call now? The Gulf of America, right? And and so there's a story about the guy who's walking down the Gulf, and he turns a corner and into a cove. And in the cove, there's thousands of starfish that have been washed out on the shore. And they're baking in the sun, and they're dying on the beach. Thousands of starfish washed up. And the man sees there's a little boy. And the little boy's going over, and one by one, he's picking up a starfish and going over to the water and throwing it in the water. And the guy goes up to the kid and he says, "What do you think you're doing? There's got to be 5,000 starfish on this beach. You can't save them all." And the little boy went over and he picked up another starfish and he threw it back in the water and said, "Yeah, but I saved that one." You saw the face of that little boy up here earlier. You saved that one. And there's a lot of others like him who need saving. As I travel around the country and I deal with, because this is a passion area for me, to help crisis pregnancy centers, on the average, I don't know, you know, how this local one compares, but on the average nationwide, when you add up what it costs to run a crisis pregnancy center and how many lives can be saved, it comes out to about $1,200 a life. About $100 a month saves a baby. About $1,200. And I'm thinking, wouldn't it be cool if you go home tonight and tomorrow you have your family around, the kids are there, and you're having dinner or something, say, hey, kids, you know what we're doing this year as a family? We're going to save a little baby. And we're going to sacrifice a little, because that's what heroes do. And we're going to give $100 a month, and we're going to save a baby. Or maybe $50 a month and pair up with somebody else, or $25 or whatever it is. This is tangible. This has real life impact. And so let me just end with this. If tonight you see the young woman and her precious baby with her, and you hear about the ministry of this great organization, if you feel a generous impulse in your heart, can I tell you something? That's probably not from you. I'm just saying. It's probably God. It's probably God. And I would encourage you to listen carefully to what God might say to you and whoever you came with tonight, and what role he might want you to play in saving these lives. And so I was talking to my wife just before we came over here. And I said, honey, this is not where we live. This is our first time to this area. It's a cool area, and hope we can come back someday. But this crisis pregnancy center is doing a great job, and they're saving a lot of lives. And I said, it's not our battle, because not where we live, but so I was feeling from God. I said, I would like to give $600 to just kind of kick things off. And my wife had tears in her eyes, and she said, honey, let's double it. And so we're going to kick things off. We're going to give $1,200. We're going to save a life. And I'm going to go back home to my little Penelope, and she's going to say, where were you, Papa? And I'm going to say, we were in North Carolina, and you know what we're doing as a family this year? We're saving a baby. So I hope you'll say a little prayer with whoever you're here with tonight. Decide what you think might be reasonable for you to give to this effort. And then whatever it is, I would encourage you, double it. Double it. And let's see what God does. So thank you for being here. Great to meet y'all. All y'all, sorry. Yeah. God bless. Kathy.
Tonight, you've heard the case. You've heard that life is valuable. You've seen that it's at risk. And you've seen the evidence that defending life requires action. Now, this is the moment to declare your verdict. The moment where you weigh the evidence and decide your role. Because a case like this is not won by words alone. It is built piece by piece through faithful, consistent action. And that's where you come in. Every dollar given tonight becomes part of the evidence that more women will see, more hearts will change, and more lives will be saved. Some of you will feel led to give a one-time gift tonight, and that matters deeply. Those gifts allow us to respond immediately to the needs right in front of us. But this year, we're inviting you into something more. We're inviting you to become a legacy partner. Legacy partners are those who choose to give monthly, standing with us not just for a single moment, but for every moment that follows. When you become a legacy partner, you're helping write a different story for generations to come. So tonight, whether you feel led to give a one-time gift or to become a legacy partner through monthly giving, we invite you to take your place in this case, because the outcome is not yet decided. And your role matters more than you know. In just a moment, I'm going to share how to give. But before that, we have an exciting announcement. We've been offered a $100,000 matching grant. What that means is if we raise $100,000, it gets matched. That means your gift tonight, it gets doubled. and that applies for the next week. So I'm going to ask you to say 2 prayers. The first prayer is to ask God for permission to be a legacy partner through monthly giving and how much He would have you to give. It costs about $4.38 per day, about the cost of a cup of coffee, to rescue one mom and offer all the services that mom and baby need. So just simply ask God for permission to be a monthly donor. The second prayer is, along with becoming a monthly donor, what can I give as a special gift tonight? You'll see on your giving form a few special gift needs, one of those being our internet marketing campaign. It will take about $3,800 a month to cover the cost of our Google ad. That would mean approximately 75 abortion-seeking women would call us first. So we need 12 people to give $3,800, and so just take a look at those special needs. See if God is moving you to be the person who meets that need. Give as much as you can according to your faith. Now's the time to fill out those giving forms. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see 2 buttons for online giving. One says Pledge and the other says Donate Now, Match Challenge. You can click either one of those to give. If you click the Pledge button, you can fill out the form and let us know your intentions for giving later. If you click the Donate Now, Match Challenge, you can give online right away. Thank you so much for your support. When you invest in life, the return is exponential. When else can you give a gift and know that someone is alive and generations will continue because of it? Thank you so much for partnering with us. We rest our case.